He laughed and said I'd never control anything in my life, but he didn't know about the envelope in my drawer. That moment replayed in my mind like a cruel, unending loop as I remembered my birthday that year, the day everyone seemed to take pleasure in reminding me of my place. My husband, with his smug grin and condescending tone, announced in front of our friends and family how little I had actually accomplished, as if my quiet persistence and late nights balancing work and home were invisible. Laughter filled the room, sharp and echoing, and I forced a smile while my stomach twisted with humiliation. I had tried to brush it off, to laugh along, but the sting settled deep. Yet, underneath that surface of ridicule, a small, secret satisfaction simmered. While he boasted and derided, he had no idea that I had quietly managed every account, every investment, and yes, that envelope contained the one thing he would never see coming. The irony of his arrogance fueled a cold, hidden determination. That day, as I watched him bask in his perceived superiority, I realized that the balance of power wasn't as one-sided as he thought. This birthday wasn't just another humiliation. It was the moment I understood how far I could rise while everyone, especially him, underestimated me. I remember the first few months of our marriage like a vivid photograph. Charming dinners, whispered promises, and the way he made me feel like I was the only person in the world. His smile could light up a room, and for a while I believed in the fairy tale he sold me. But the cracks started small, almost invisible at first. A dismissive comment about my job, a roll of his eyes when I shared an idea, the subtle way his family always praised his sisters while barely acknowledging me. At first, I convinced myself it was harmless, chalked it up to nerves or personality. But the pattern became undeniable. I was constantly on the sidelines, applauding his achievements while my own accomplishments were minimized or ignored. Birthdays and holidays weren't celebrations. They were stages where favoritism played out, where his mother would gush over his brother's success and barely glance at me. I began to feel like a guest in my own life, my value measured by comparison and approval that never came. Every microaggression, every whispered insult, built a quiet resentment that simmered beneath my forced smiles. I loved him once, truly, but with each slight, I saw the mask fall away, revealing the man I had married was not the man I had believed in. That contrast between charm and cruelty became the rhythm of our life, a constant reminder that affection could be a weapon, and love could feel like a cage. No one ever saw the hours I poured into keeping our lives together, the late nights balancing bills, investments, and spreadsheets while he casually spent whatever he pleased. I managed our accounts, negotiated contracts, and planned our future quietly, meticulously, without a single word of recognition. At home, I kept everything running: laundry, meals, family schedules, social obligations, while he acted as if the world revolved around him. Opportunities came and went, lucrative deals he neglected, ideas he brushed aside, yet somehow I was the one who silently made everything work. I watched him charm clients, bask in praise, and take credit for decisions I had subtly orchestrated behind the scenes. The frustration built like a weight in my chest, a constant ache that no one acknowledged. I was invisible in plain sight, my labor taken for granted, my intelligence undervalued, my patience stretched thin. Yet I carried it all, because for a long time I believed loyalty meant endurance, and love meant sacrifice. Every dollar I managed, every plan I executed, every effort to maintain stability, it was all mine alone, a quiet power hidden behind a facade of submission, waiting for the right moment to matter. I couldn't ignore the whispers any longer. The late nights he claimed were work, the mysterious texts I stumbled across, the way his hand lingered on someone else's at parties. At the gala that winter, I overheard a friend mention seeing him slip out with a woman from another table, and my stomach sank. I remembered the time he mocked me in front of my colleagues, laughing when I presented a report he'd criticized privately, making it seem like my efforts were incompetent. The humiliation burned, not just for me, but for the image I had tried to maintain. I replayed the conversations in my head. "You're too sensitive," he'd said when I confronted him. "You're imagining things," but I wasn't. Every betrayal, every snide remark, every public slight built a quiet, heavy tension inside me. I started asking myself questions I hadn't dared before. Could I stay in a marriage where respect was absent? Could love exist in a space filled with lies and degradation? The thought of legal separation crept in, small and terrifying, yet liberating. My mind wandered to the courtroom, imagining a space where I could finally be heard, finally vindicated. And even as fear gripped me, a spark of resolve flared. I wouldn't remain invisible forever, and I wouldn't let betrayal define the rest of my life. The morning of the divorce hearing, he walked in with that same arrogant grin, as if the world belonged to him. He didn't even hesitate. In front of the judge, our lawyers, and my family, he boasted, "I'll live comfortably off her fortune. She doesn't stand a chance." Laughter rippled from some corners of the courtroom, and I could feel the weight of everyone's assumptions pressing down on me. They all assumed I had nothing up my sleeve, that I would crumble under his bravado, that I would settle quietly while he thrived. Even my lawyer seemed hesitant, as if he had bought into the same story. But beneath my composed exterior, a quiet fire burned. I had prepared meticulously, every document and account arranged, every financial secret accounted for. While he flaunted confidence and the world whispered disbelief, I knew the truth. The imbalance they all assumed was real was only skin deep. I smiled politely, letting the words hang in the air, knowing that the real power hadn't been revealed yet. This was his stage, yes, but it wasn't the finale. Late nights became my sanctuary as I spread stacks of statements, contracts, and receipts across the dining table, each one a silent testament to the life I had quietly built while everyone else slept or ignored the work I did. I reviewed every investment, every account, every document that could prove the truth of my independence and foresight. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the thrill of finally holding the power they thought I lacked. Hidden in the top drawer of my desk was the envelope, thick and unassuming, containing the key that could shift the entire narrative in my favor. I imagined their faces when its contents were revealed. Shock, disbelief, regret. No one suspected I had planned for this moment so carefully. Even my own family, who had minimized my accomplishments for years, would be stunned. I could almost feel the courtroom tension already, building like a storm as I imagined turning the tables. Quietly, methodically, I was no longer the underestimated one. I was the one holding the strings. By the time the hearing began, the balance of power had already shifted, though no one yet knew it. I was ready to claim what had always been mine. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with curious onlookers, family members, and lawyers. He strutted in with that same smug confidence, his laughter echoing off the high ceilings as he leaned toward anyone who would listen. "She'll never manage anything on her own," he whispered loudly enough for the nearest rows to hear. "All she does is spend and complain." I felt the heat of humiliation rise, but I forced myself to remain composed, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Inside, my mind raced, cataloging every slight, every injustice, every secret I had prepared. I imagined presenting them all, one by one, letting the truth speak louder than his arrogance ever could. The judge glanced at us, her eyes sharp, waiting for the proceedings to begin. My husband's smirk widened, convinced the day would unfold exactly as he envisioned. I bit back a retort, knowing my moment would come. Then the unexpected happened. The judge leaned forward, pen poised over her notes, and asked, "Let's start with the assets. Can you both provide a detailed account?" A ripple of tension passed through the room, and for the first time, I sensed that the balance of power might shift. But would I be ready to strike? I took a deep breath, letting the room settle into a hush as I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. My hands were steady, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Every eye in the courtroom turned toward me as I slid it across the table to the judge, the paper crisp, unassuming, yet containing the evidence that would dismantle the illusion my husband had built. His confident smirk faltered, just a flicker at first, then widened into a visible, almost comical panic as the judge opened the envelope and began scanning its contents. My carefully documented accounts, hidden investments, and legally protected assets were laid bare in black and white, leaving no room for his arrogance to hide behind. The courtroom fell silent, every whisper dying as the magnitude of my preparation became undeniable. I watched his face, watching the color drain, the arrogance replaced by disbelief. He had counted on me being unprepared, fragile, invisible, and now the tables had turned. The friends and family who had once whispered doubt glanced at each other in stunned recognition. Power, long assumed to be his alone, had shifted in an instant. I felt a thrill of vindication, not from cruelty, but from justice finally being recognized. My heart lifted as the emotional weight I had carried for years seemed to dissipate, and in that quiet, electrifying moment, the second public reversal was complete. He was no longer in control, and I was finally seen for everything I truly was. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as the judge looked up from the envelope, her eyes narrowing at my husband. "Mr. Collins," she said, voice steady but firm. "It appears your claims about financial dependency are inaccurate." He stammered, opening his mouth, but no words came out. My lawyer leaned over, whispering, "They're stunned. You've got them right where you need them." I caught my sister's wide-eyed stare, her hand pressed to her mouth, finally seeing the truth I'd carried alone for years. Even my mother, who had always doubted me, looked incredulous, and a quiet nod of acknowledgement passed between us. "I think it's clear," the judge continued, "that the assets in question are under full control of Mrs. Collins, and any attempts to claim them otherwise will be invalid." A ripple of murmurs passed through the gallery, friends and acquaintances exchanging disbelief. My husband's face twisted, a mix of fury and humiliation, as he realized that every boast, every sneer, had been for nothing. I felt a surge of vindication, a release of all the frustration, fear, and invisibility I had endured. The courtroom, once a stage for his arrogance, had become mine. Whispers of admiration and shock surrounded me as the reality sank in. I had won, not through revenge alone, but through careful planning and undeniable truth. And as I met the judge's gaze, I knew this moment would mark a turning point I would never forget. The courtroom erupted into murmurs as the judge's eyes scanned the envelope, then flicked sharply to my husband. "Mr. Collins," she said, her voice carrying over the stunned whispers, "it seems your assertions about financial control are inaccurate." His smug grin faltered, a nervous twitch betraying him, and he opened his mouth, but no words came. My lawyer leaned over, whispering, "They didn't see that coming. You've completely flipped the room." My sister gasped, hand covering her mouth, her disbelief matching the wide eyes of relatives who had long dismissed me. I don't understand," he sputtered, voice tight, as he tried to regain composure. Friends and acquaintances glanced at one another, whispering, "She actually planned for this." She knew all along. Even my mother, usually critical, sat frozen, eyes softening with recognition. "The assets are under Mrs. Collins' full control," the judge continued, "and any claims otherwise are null." A ripple of gasps and quiet chatter spread through the gallery. I felt a wave of relief and triumph flood me, the humiliation I endured for years giving way to justice realized. The arrogance that had dominated the room minutes ago was gone, replaced by stunned silence. I finally felt seen, validated, and unstoppable, the careful preparation I'd hidden for so long now shining like undeniable proof of my resilience. The days after the hearing felt surreal, like waking into a world that had always existed but I had never fully claimed. I moved through my mornings with a newfound ease, managing my accounts, investments, and plans with the quiet satisfaction of someone who finally held the reins of their own life. For the first time in years, I made decisions purely for myself, what to invest in, where to travel, how to spend my time, without needing permission or validation. Friends who had doubted me now watched with curiosity, and even former acquaintances seemed hesitant, as if testing whether I was truly different. I allowed myself to dream again, to imagine new ventures, new challenges, and even a tentative spark of connection with someone who appreciated me fully. There was no rush, no need to fill the silence with anyone else's expectations. Each step I took, from signing contracts to picking up the phone for an opportunity I had always wanted, reinforced the sense that I was in control at last. I felt strong, capable, and, most importantly, free. The shadows of betrayal lingered, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they marked the path I had walked to reclaim my life, my confidence, and my future. Weeks after the verdict, word spread quietly but gleefully through our social circle. My husband, still convinced of his charm and influence, had publicly bragged about a deal he supposedly secured using my name. only to have it collapse spectacularly in front of potential investors. The humiliation was instantaneous. His confident persona cracked under scrutiny, laughter and whispers following him like shadows. I heard about it secondhand, a small, satisfying echo of justice, and allowed myself a private smile. It wasn't cruelty. I didn't need to orchestrate this. Karma had simply done its work. Life had shifted irrevocably. I remained focused, respected, and in control, while he stumbled through the consequences of his own arrogance. The lessons of patience, preparation, and quiet strength had carried me here, and witnessing the natural balance restore itself felt profoundly validating. I stepped forward into the next chapter of my life with clarity, dignity, and hope, knowing that betrayal and overconfidence always have their reckoning, and that true power lies in resilience, not in boasting.